Kellyanne Conway is with us. And Kellyanne, of course, we all know, is what is your official position? Special counsel to the president, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, counsel to the president. Hi, Sean.
How are you? I know, boy, you guys don't rest over there. I almost feel sorry for you. I've been telling
you do your part.
I've been telling Republicans in Congress, you got to keep up with the speed of Trump. And some of them say, that's like impossible. Oh, we're trying, though. Let me start with this. The New York Times reported it. McClatchy reported it. The BBC reported it. And all of these other major news organizations, not the vast right-wing conspiracy, that, in fact, there had been some surveillance, even the word wiretapping used by the New York Times against the president. The president tweeted it out. And yet they only focus on the president, not on the fact that this came from the mainstream media. What are your thoughts on where this stands now?
Where it stands, Sean, is that the president has made very clear he has asked the House and Senate Intelligence Committees to combine this particular line of investigation with the existing investigation into Russia and the Trump campaign. We already know how attenuated and unproven that is. Every single day they scream Russia, Russia, Russia. I'm convinced people are getting $50 every time they say Russia on TV.
By the way, you better not turning it into a drinking game, Kellyanne, because you'll be wasted in about 30 seconds.
I'm not going there, but I will tell you it's a serious point in that, the Democrats are so quick to call for special prosecutors and investigations and every single thing they want to use the power of the government to come down on some attenuated circumstance or connection or lack of connection, and yet here they're not even willing to entertain the idea of combining this in an existing investigation. Secondly, we do have to call out the double standard here. The double standard for anonymous sources. The media love to use anonymous sources to fuel their speculation and their stories when it's something that could be potentially embarrassing or negative damaging to President Trump. But the moment an anonymous or open source material could be positive for the president, they want exact proof at that moment. And look, thirdly, I want to say, if we took out the word tweet and put in the word leak on most of these mainstream media stories, we'd get to the bottom of a lot more important information to America.
By the way, anyway, I think what you're saying here, but there's a very big danger here. And let me just quote the mainstream media. If they wiretapped the opposition party in the middle of a campaign, and the statement with the president was absolutely so absurd in as much as, well, we didn't order it, that it was a meaningless statement. I want to know if the president knew about FISA requests, if they took place, if they happened in June and again in October, and if surveillance on an opposition party candidate was taking place during the election. Because from my perspective, that is really scary, especially in light of the WikiLeaks claim to release a lot of the CIA cyber secrets. And then you got the deeper part, Kellyanne, which is this, what I call shadow government of Obama, all his holdovers, coupled with the bureaucratic swamp, lifetimers, that clearly have been leaking against you and this administration like a sieve. It has to stop, doesn't it?
That's the entire point of this president, that these leaks are damaging to our national security and our intelligence operations. These are not, random leaks meant to embarrass someone or have a palace intrigue story. These are national security and intelligence leaks. And, Sean, let's remember that hours after the president delivered, which by nearly all accounts was an unbelievably well-received, well-executed in content and tone joint session address last week, the New York Times came out with an article that said the Obama administration rushed to preserve and spread around the government intelligence information. They did that because they did not anticipate Donald Trump being the president. They anticipated Hillary Clinton being the president, and they rushed around doing that. Why would they do that? And I would also say, what is everybody afraid of? Just add it as part of the investigation, and let's see what we learn. And by the way, I'm not going to let any of this undercut, this obsession by the media on this, undercut the fact that, as you pointed out, it's a very busy week already. It's just Tuesday afternoon. It's such a busy week already for executive action legislation. I just spent a couple of hours on Capitol Hill with members and staffers and talking to them about the Affordable Care Act repeal and replacement. There's so much that's wrong with Obamacare. It's an Affordable Care Act that is incredibly unaffordable. There are 5 states that have no choices in insurers. There's nearly 1/3 of all counties in this country have only one insurer participating. There are no choices. There is no access. And in just the past year, the coverage choices have dropped by about 28% as insurers have just fled the market. And others have said we're in a death spiral with Obamacare. So what this president is trying to do, and he's been working on this for a very long time with his vice president, with the leadership, with the House and Senate committees, and members. And what they've done is they've laid out 5 core principles. Everybody can listen. Pre-existing conditions are covered. We're going to get rid of these ridiculous penalties and taxes. What the president said last week in his joint session is absolutely correct, Sean. He said mandating Americans to buy government-run health insurance was never a good idea in the first place. He's chucking that entire premise and replacing it with a more equitable tax treatment. People who either don't get their health care coverage through their employer or through Medicaid have access to tax credits to use that to purchase a plan. People will have health savings accounts. What does that do? I mean, it allows you to control your health care spending.
Well, let me ask this. Obviously, this is just a skeletal sketch of where a bill is ultimately going to go. I mean, there has been a lot of criticism today, and the Freedom Caucus is against it, and I know that Senators Paul and Lee and Cruz are against it. The Heritage Action has come out against it. The Club for Growth, Freedom Works, Americans for Prosperity. I think their biggest criticism is it doesn't have. It's more of a top-down new entitlement subsidy program for those that don't have it. And speaking with Dave Bratt, the congressman from Virginia, what he would like to see is more block grants going to the states, more in terms of really allowing a full repeal. And again, I know there's challenges because of reconciliation as it was passed and needing 60 votes in the Senate. So let me put that off to the side. But having more options as it relates to health savings accounts, health care cooperatives like this guy I'm going to have on TV tonight, Josh Umber, and what he's been able to do in Wichita, Kansas. So tell me where you think with that opposition, where does it go from here? I guess there's going to be a lot of meetings about it and amendments drawn up for it.
There are many meetings about it. We are having open dialogue with the members, conversations. I do know the fastest way to get on TV is through friendly fire, is to criticize one of your own. But at the same time, I want people to remember what it is we're replacing here. It is a complete and abject disaster. And may I say, Obamacare is something that all of these members in the House and Senate successfully ran against and promised they would repeal and replace it. So we certainly hope they'll take a look at this and, of course, bring their considerations and their concerns forward. We're aware of other options that were on the table, but we're also aware that we've been dealing with Obamacare for 7 years, Sean. The final version passed in, March of 2010. So this has very deep roots, very strong tentacles, and uprooting it and replacing it, frankly, is something we've just never done as a country. Usually you don't roll back things like this. You learn to live with them and manage them better. The idea that in the next, I think before the April recess, you could have Republican House, Senate, and its president get health care passed or close to being passed, and you get Neil Gorsuch confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. These are 2 very big pieces of progress. And look, some other things will come later in phases 2 and 3 because they're subject to a 60-vote threshold, not a 50-vote threshold, and not the pen of the HHS secretary. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but it's important that we all understand the procedural obstacles in place here. So interstate portability, having insurance being sold across state lines, something that President Trump and candidate Trump are very emphatic about, and also drug pricing. Those have to come in phase 3. It's just a matter of the threshold to which they are subject in the House and the Senate. So, in the Senate. So there are many things, but I would say to people, look at what's good about this. I mean, you get rid of Obamacare, you literally repeal it, and you put in its place something that it still allows pre-existing conditions to be covered, has that coverage for those up to the age of 26 on their parents' plan, but allows for that stable transition for people who are already involved in health exchanges and like what they have. But at the same time, you've got to stop penalizing people who, Sean, they've opted to pay the penalty or the tax, as have some of their employers, in lieu of buying anything because it's just so prohibitive. There are no low-premium, high-deductible plans that are affordable to most Americans. And there has been a disastrous result for many Americans who don't have another opportunity to buy health insurance out of their own pockets. They don't have that kind of spending money, disposable income. So you've got some of these, say, single moms who now have 2 jobs, 26, 27 hours each, so that the employer doesn't have to provide them health care as a full-time employee. And instead they have 2 jobs, they're away from their kids that much more, and they still don't have the benefits. That has to change.
I think the most important thing for people is that we've got to understand that the government can't run this. We've got to understand that it can't be top-down. We've got to understand that free market competition. You know, I've got this guy on TV tonight, and if you get a chance, I know you're working until 11 o'clock every night, so you probably don't watch my show like you used to, and I know you miss it every night, and you probably TiVo it, I hope. I have this guy, Dr. Umber, and what he's been able to do is fairly remarkable, and more importantly, he's duplicated it in other cities and other towns. He's in Wichita, Kansas. He'll be on tonight, and he'll be on this radio program tomorrow. And what he did is set up a cooperative. It costs $10 per child a month, $50 per adult a month. It includes as much care as you need for the entire month. If you need stitches, if you have a broken bone, if you need x-rays, if you need diagnosis, even pharmaceuticals, he went directly to the companies and was able to negotiate prices 90% discount. And the good thing about it is then you get a catastrophic plan on top of it, which means if you have a bad car accident, if God forbid you have a heart attack or get cancer, then after your deductible, all of that would be covered. And at the hospital of your choice based on the plan you selected. And at a low rate. We all know that catastrophic care is the cheapest. It just is, there seems that there's a lot of free market ways to do this that are successful. And I know that this is included partly in the bill, but I'd like to see more of that and explain more to the American people. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And Sean, I personally hear from many healthcare professionals and consumers and providers pretty much daily with excellent ideas, particularly the physicians. They have excellent ideas. And they have ideas along the lines of drug pricing, of certainly what you could do with health savings accounts. And once you have people in a system that is not government-run and top-down, but bottom-up and free market and patient-centric, then you can add to that once people understand the kind of system we're in. We hear those all the time, and that, of course, is important because, remember, everything you describe is how we improve upon the free market system that's about to replace the government system that's been foisted on us for 7 years. I have to say, other Republican presidents probably could have lost a little bit of the courage, saying we thought we could do something, but instead we're going to do nothing. We'll let Obamacare fail in itself. We'll blame Obama. You can't do that when people need health coverage. This is an urgent concern for many men and women. By the way, many of the forgotten men and forgotten women have complained about this. It was a very important aspect of what he ran on. I mean, we were promised Obamacare would bring down health care costs. They went up. We were promised people can keep their health care plans. They can keep their doctors. That was a big lie. It was not true. We were promised that Obamacare would increase competition between insurance providers. Well, that's not true. We're down to no insurance providers.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Well, even the CEO of Aetna said it's a death spiral.
Yes, it's a death spiral.
I got to let you go. But
polling shows people want an alternative to Obamacare.
Well said. All right, we're going to watch this evolve because it's going to be altered and shifted and changed, and hopefully for the better. Kellyanne, always a pleasure. I know you're working so hard. I've known you for years, and you've always been a hard worker, but I know how hard you're working and how little rest you're getting. We do appreciate all you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, darling. Keep us all in your prayers. Thanks, Sean.
You bet.